That was my wife I just kissed in case you Mr. Chief Justice, Associate Justices, members of the Court, members of the Court of Appeals, the District Court, thank you. May it please the Court. First, I want to thank every one of you for being here today. This is an important day for me, and you honor me with your presence here. And I want you to know that I recognize and am grateful for your kindness and your support as I undertake this new role, stepping into the shoes filled so well by my predecessor, Renee DeMoss. It's a rare occasion that one has the opportunity to stand before the justices of our highest court in Oklahoma, and a distinguished gathering of friends, family, lawyers, seated here in this magnificent courtroom, this historical courtroom, to express his love and appreciation, gratitude for those closest and dearest to his heart. Today, I'm blessed I have that unique opportunity, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. First and foremost to my wife, Tina, I love you very much. I don't believe I could love you more. And yes, I am grateful every day for your love and affection, our relationship, your companionship, and more than that, your friendship. And yes, your tolerance for me and the things that I do that drive you mad sometimes. And I want you to know, as well as everyone here, how much I appreciate you, how proud I am of you, and all you have done and continue to do to make our home and our life together a great blessing. They are in my life. Thank you, and I love you. My aunt and uncle, Dr. John Poarch and Anita Poarch, from Edmond, a guiding light in my life and Tina's, a constant beacon. You have helped me understand myself and others around me, encouraged me and Tina, taught us the value of letting go, risking honesty when it is the hardest thing to do at the moment. To my brother Jeff Poarch for putting up with my antics when we were kids, thank you for being here. My sister Lisa Seam for being our baby sister and all that comes with that, and for your love and support. Both are here from California where I grew up, where they both live even today. My cousin, David, John, and I guess Carol's not here, but Kelly is. Kelly and John will be married in February next month, and I'm sure they'd like to see you all there at their wedding. Kelly's the other lawyer in the family. There are two of us. So. My niece and nephew, Russell and Ashley, who drove virtually all night to get here from Midland. As I used to tell students when I was assistant dean at the College of Law, there are only two reasons people come to these events. One is because they're proud of you, the other is because they're stunned. When they found out, they showed up. My friends John and Ginger, David and Candace McCoy, John and Ginger Wetz, I'm sorry. Clark and Peggy Brown, my friends from Medicine Park, they're here today, and I appreciate you being here. Certainly then my colleagues, my partner, Lindsay Bailey. I must tell you, the firm is Bailey and Poarch. What you need to know is there are four Baileys and one Poarch, because Lindsay's two sons, Robert and Ben, practiced with us, as well as his daughter-in-law, Claire, who were here, seated over here. So I'm in the minority, but I hold up my end of the deal, I think. I will say also, I appreciate Judge Lewis, you being here from the Court of Criminal Appeals, Judge Hetherington, my friend, longtime friend, and Judge Bachman for coming here from Cleveland County to see me through this. thank you all for being here. So who am I? For those of you who don't know me, and those of you who do, I am a native Oklahoman. I was born here, then I left and returned. My parents met and married in California during World War II. Then they moved back here to Oklahoma, and then after a few years realized they were not going to make it here, so they were going back to the promised land. So we all got in the car and went that direction. So they returned to, my father grew up in Logan County near Crescent on a farm. My mother's from South Dakota, where her parents were teachers and actually had a small store, had a small general store. Like many of their generation, they met during World War II, and probably highly unlikely they would have otherwise met but for the war. So you can blame the fact that you are sitting here listening to me today speak to you on World War II. Born in Oklahoma City, I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area during the 1950s and 60s. It was a post-war California of mass migration to new homes. In the suburbs, the Korean War, the beginning of the Cold War, deck and cover days, the decade of the Eisenhower-Nixon administration, and actually Ronald Reagan was just another good-looking matinee idol at that point. He later became the governor. I received my elementary education in a public school in a small town of about 2,000 people, a town named after an early colonial landowner from Spain, Don Pacheco. It's Pacheco, California. He was among the folks who settled California early, long before gold was discovered there by the 49ers. It was a town surrounded by vineyards, orchards, truck farms, 30 miles from San Francisco, where I played outside barefoot with my shirt off until my dad whistled for me to come home to eat dinner. It's where I was a crossing guard in the 6th grade, learned how to make noise, not really music, with a clarinet, perfected the art of crawdad fishing in the creek that ran through the middle of town, and tried my first cigarette behind the library with a couple of buddies when I was 12, and got caught. I got my first job ever there as a paper boy for the Oakland Tribune. Went on to middle school and high school education in the nearby town of Concord, where I rode the bus each day back and forth as John F. Kennedy became the President of the United States. The free speech movement was growing on the steps of Sproul Hall at UC Berkeley, 20 miles away, while the growing civil rights movement in the South became more and more part of my growing sense of right and wrong, and fairness and injustice in society. At the same time, I learned, not in the school room, but in the schoolyard, that friends I grew up with, friends from generations of families in California, only 20 years before that, had been unceremoniously removed from their homes and their businesses and relocated to remote camps by the government during World War II, simply because they were of Japanese ancestry. As my teenage moral awakening began to grow, my mother took me to see To Kill a Mockingbird, Harper Lee's celebrated narrative of a small-town Southern lawyer appointed by the local judge to defend an innocent black man unjustly accused of a terrible crime involving a white woman. It was my first exposure to anything that had to do with the word lawyer, a term, a concept, a profession I knew absolutely nothing about. But for me, in that short hour and a half, in that theater with my mom, Atticus Finch became an example that never left me. Entering high school, the Cuban Missile Crisis was coming to a head, which I remember while I was on the freshman football team, a lot smaller than I am today, I promise you. We all gathered around the coach and his transistor radio to listen to see what the Russians were going to do. Were they going to run that blockade? And if they did, what it meant for me as a young student. These were the events that shaped my early life. Perhaps the seminal event for me at that age being the assassination of JFK. When I was in high school, I was a sophomore. Coincidentally, at the same time, reading Profiles in Courage from my next book report. I remember standing in biology class as the national anthem played over the PA system. following the principal's announcement that the president had been shot and killed in Dallas. Holding the book about the war hero who is now our dead president, trying to make sense of the senselessness of that. The war, his sacrifice, his near death in that war, and now his violent death in an ideological war. It stuck with me, the dire consequences that can result from a war of words. Like many of my generation, my introduction to adulthood came early. In 1964, during the presidential election and the discussion at the dinner table at my house, my mother, in an effort to persuade my father and change his way of thinking, voiced her belief that if he voted for Barry Goldwater against Lyndon Baines Johnson, as he intended to do, their oldest son, me, would end up going to Vietnam. I didn't even know what Vietnam was when she said that. Well, unpersuaded by her argument, my father did vote for Barry Goldwater, and my mother's prediction came true. I sure enough went to Vietnam. Shortly out of high school, I joined the Army to find myself, and soon found myself where I didn't want to be, a medic in Vietnam at age 18. Now, without belaboring the point, suffice it to say that that experience and my return from that experience convinced me that college was not nearly as hard as I thought it was going to be, and it was a much better option. But from that experience, and particularly from that conversation observing my parents in the 1964 presidential election, I learned an equally valuable lesson that I have carried with me throughout my life. A man should listen to his wife when she speaks to him at dinner. She may have a point he needs to consider. Informed by my experiences growing up in California to that point and out of the Army, I returned to Oklahoma in 1969 for college and law school, and I've been here ever since. I've been a federal prosecutor, a private practitioner, a general counsel for a small privately held company, a law school assistant dean, and a municipal judge in a college town. Something of a professional vagabond, I suppose. But all over the course of almost 40 years as a lawyer, and now president of the OBA. But enough about me. What about the Oklahoma Bar Association? What about our system of justice in Oklahoma? What lies ahead in 2015? Well, to begin, let me make this clear for the lawyers in Oklahoma: nothing is broken. We don't need to fix anything. Our association has been blessed with outstanding leadership and presidents Renee DeMoss, Jim Stewart, seated back here, Kathy Christensen, I saw Kathy over here, Deb Reard, who's not here with us, I don't think, today, Alan Smallwood before that, and the list goes on and on. I'm the 110th, there were 109 before me. All of them supported by the steady leadership. This man seated here, John Morris Williams, the executive director, and his very capable staff, the Bar Association. The programs we now have in place, put in place by these leaders, we will build on. We will continue in 2015. Oklahoma Lawyers for American Heroes, the newly established Master Lawyers section. Believe it or not, 60% of the lawyers in Oklahoma are 50 years of age or over. So these are issues that we need to address for this segment of our Bar Association. Our public education initiative that Renee started last year, speaking to local communities about the importance of keeping politics out of the courtroom and maintaining our merit selection process and the appointment of judges and justices, and working with our legislators to help them understand the role of the judiciary in our civil society and the third co-equal branch of government. Will 2015 bring about challenges? Undoubtedly. We have had them the past few years with some legislation that has been introduced. Fortunately, we've been able to persuade our legislators that they needed to reconsider some of those things, and they have. And contrary to popular belief, the legislature is not lawyers. Only 25 of 149 legislators that will meet soon up here on the fourth floor are lawyers. Well, that presents a bit of a challenge. There's that old adage we've heard: the making of sausages and laws are both things better not observed. Well, the cooking that goes on here oftentimes is done by people who really don't have any background in law, while well qualified, highly qualified elected officials. They just don't have any training in that area, so lawyers are not part or a minor part of the mix, and sometimes that ends up in a meal for 3.5 million people that doesn't quite work or has issues with it. Well, and where does that meal end up oftentimes? Where are the critics of the cooking? They're seated behind me, it's their job. But it's not a matter of personal preference for them as they sit here. They sometimes do have to say, your efforts, however well intended, resulted in a mess, not a meal. Well, no one likes to have their hard work criticized. We understand that. At least justices certainly understand that. But in their case, the standard by which the hard work is measured is not a mere subjective opinion based on an individual preference, but the compact by which we have all agreed to govern ourselves. The mutual promises we've pledged to one another as citizens of the state and the nation, the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Oklahoma. When we contemplate this turn of events, the challenge presented by the rotation of legislators bearing new recipes as they come in with little or no experience in the kitchen, I cannot help but be reminded of the words of the poet T.S. Eliot, who said, "We shall not cease from exploration. And the end of all of our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time." This is the 800th anniversary this year of the Magna Carta, the Great Charter, the Charter of Liberties, thrust in the face of King John of England at the point of the sword at Runnymede in 1215 by his barons. The document that embraced the revolutionary idea that no man, not even the king, is above the law, that the government must be administered according to the law, what is commonly referred to as the rule of law. The rule of law now embodied in our Constitution. Our constitutional system depends upon the faithfulness, the moral courage, integrity, and stewardship of generations of lawyers, judges, and justices who have brought it to life and preserved it to make sure it continues to play a central role in our society and the way we govern ourselves. The health of our third co-equal branch of government, the judiciary, and the health of our state and nation, as recited daily by children when the school bell rings, one nation under God with liberty and justice for all, depends on us as lawyers and judges to set aside rigid ideology, to ensure that we preserve the rule of law by meeting each case, divorced from personal bias, to analyze the facts with fairness and honesty, with the intent to apply the law to the facts in a manner consistent with decisions handed down before us and consistent with the Constitution, the legal principle of stare decisis, to stand by that which is decided. I'm proud to be a lawyer. At its core, it's a noble profession, like other true professions founded upon a sworn oath, to before all else support and defend the Constitution, that fundamental compact at the heart of our way of life, the way of life that includes the promise that we all can live in a free society with liberty and justice for all. As lawyers, we are trusted guardians of society's rules, and we are those citizens who freely choose to bear the burden to challenge the status quo when society moves in the direction, as it often does, to protect and comfort the greatest of us at the expense of the least of us, a burden for which we are often maligned and vilified in the public square, lashing we willingly bear to ensure that we leave this house in which we all live at least as good as when we arrived, if not better, hopefully. As lawyers, we respond to that sense of duty that calls on us to be loyal and faithful to our nation's core principles, even when it's unpopular, to defend even the guilty, the unpopular, sometimes the seemingly outrageous, when the Constitution is threatened, forgotten, ignored, or just plain inconvenient. To stand against unfair and oppressive behavior, to advocate in favor of the minority view against the popular will of the majority when no one else will do that. Though not often acknowledged, the role of lawyers, the one we play in society, in preserving the liberties we all enjoy is one that has long been recognized. That is why, as Shakespeare so aptly pointed out in Henry VI, to succeed at tyranny, the first thing we do, let's kill all the lawyers. Thank you for being here. I will say this, no one seems to like their lawyer except their own. That's been my experience. Thank you. I'm honored to be your president. I'm honored you came here to see me today. Listen to me. My goal this year is to make my fellow lawyers as proud of being a lawyer as I am, and to help them celebrate the role we all play in preserving the rule of law in the state of Oklahoma. Thank you very much.